Luke in Luke 15, it's sort of like Matthew 25, where you have the three great parables in Matthew 25. There are three great parables in Luke 15, and you cannot get out of Luke without reading at least the parable of. It's called the parable of the prodigal son, but it's helpful to hear the two stories before, which is the lost coin and the lost sheep, and this sense of Jesus always saying, forget about the 99. If there's one lost sheep, go after it, or one lost coin, lose everything for that. So there's this dear care for the individual, no matter who they are or what's happened. And we see that come to full completeness in the parable of the prodigal son. What happens is you've got a man who's got two sons. And the younger brother, I'm a younger brother, and you're a younger brother?
I'm a younger sister.
And I also have been accused of making some questionable choices, living on the edge a little bit when I was younger. You were always good, right? Okay.
Good Samaritan.
Well, I was more the prodigal son. The prodigal son does something terrible. He says to his father, he asks for his inheritance, which is tantamount to saying to his father, I wish you were dead. In fact, I wish you were dead so much that you would just give me my inheritance now. And the father actually relents, and he gives the boy the money. And the boy takes the money, and he goes and lives in a far country. And he squanders the money, at least we learn from the brother, in prostitutes and fast living. And he burns through that money fast, and then there's a famine in the land, and he has to figure out how to eat. So he hires himself out as a carer of pigs, which, in a Jewish context, pork's an unclean animal.
Yeah.
He's as low as it can get. He's in the gutters, is what Luke is telling us. And then a great thing happens. The boy is smart, and he goes, I bet my father is eating pretty well at home. I bet, if I came up with a good enough story, I bet I could get him to take me back in. And so he picks himself out, and he's going back on the road home, and he's thinking over in his head what kind of story he could possibly tell. What he does not know is that ever since he's been gone, his father has been mourning him like a dead son. And the father is actually standing on the edge of the field, and he's just scanning. He's just scanning the horizon. And when the boy comes back, before he can get his stupid, horrible, fake story of how sorry he is, before he can even say a word, the father has already embraced him, and he calls for the fatted calf. He calls for the ring to be placed on the son's finger. And the most interesting part, then, of this story is this. The elder brother is watching this whole thing, and he sees all of these gifts being given to this jerk brother of his who's wasted all this money. And he does what I think is pretty normal. He complains. He says to his father, why are you giving him all this? And his father says something so beautiful. He says, you've been with me the whole time. Everything that I have is yours. Your brother was dead, and now he's alive. And it's time to rejoice. And it's saying, let us be thankful when someone, whoever they are, has been making choices that are harmful to them, to others. And when they get back on the path, rather than being, glad they've come, glad you finally made it, rather than being snooty and feeling self-righteous, rejoice. I feel the full force of this parable around Christmas and Easter in the church. Christmas and Easter are two of my favorite times, mainly because we kind of open our doors and we see people that we never otherwise see. Folks, it's like a homing call that folks feel to come home to roost to church. Folks who do not always feel comfortable here. And one of the great sadnesses to me are often church people, and I love you, this is not a critique, sort of is, I suppose, who say, C&E people. Christian people who come just on Christmas and Easter.
I call them creasters.
Creasters. Oh. But this parable is saying, give it a rest, older brother. older sister.
Mhm.
Why don't you rejoice instead that these folks who you never otherwise see come home
Yeah.
for this time, and throw open the doors and throw open the party.
Yeah.
Because you never know what someone's going to hear and how they might be touched.
Yeah.
And this is true for everyone in our family. When you've got a person who you've watched kind of spiral down, this parable is telling you to hold out hope.
Yeah.
Especially when it might be you.
Yeah. And welcome them back
Yeah.
with open arms, and be expecting them to come back.
Because the last thing
Yeah.
with this one is that it's called the parable of the prodigal son. People, what does prodigal mean? It's not a word we use anymore.
Yeah.
It means lavish. It means
Wasteful.
wasteful. And it's a terrible name because the son is not really the one who's all that prodigal. He does waste the money that he's been given.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. The true prodigal in this parable is the father. The father is the one who lavishes his love, who gives. After he's given away all of his inheritance, half of what he has, then he gives him even more. It's an extraordinary story.
I have comments to make off camera, so we'll talk later.